Hey there, and welcome back. It's James here, and in this video, we're going to pick up where we left off talking about strings. And what I wanted to talk about before I did any coding in this video is I wanted to talk about the fact that there's actually documentation that exists for Python. You can access it via the internet. Simply go to python.org and then click on the Docs button, and that will take you over to the documentation for Python. There's a lot of stuff in Python that we may not cover in this video series. In fact, I guarantee you we're not going to cover everything in this video series. It's nearly impossible to do so. But you can go back to the documentation and you can find a lot of stuff on your own. Most programming languages have documentation. Python is not unique in that aspect. But it's good to have this bookmarked. It's docs.python.org. And then you want to make sure that you're on the Python version 3 because Python version 2 is outdated. And I don't believe it's supported anymore. All right, so what we're going to do in this video is we're going to talk about strings some more, and we're going to talk about some simple methods that we can use with our strings. Now, if you're not familiar with methods, we're going to talk about those in more detail later in the video series. But for right now, just understand that it's a block of code that executes some type of action. And we're going to write our own methods, throughout this course or throughout these videos. But there's also methods that have been written for us that are built into the programming language itself. So for example, let's say that I had a program and I had a variable called name and it was all lowercase and I wanted to find a way to capitalize just the first letter but nothing else. And of course you might say, well, you could just, make the variable that way. But let's say that we were not assigning a hard value to the variable. Let's say that we were taking user input. For example, what is your name? And when we printed the name, we wanted it to print correctly. We didn't want all lowercase letters, for example. So we could say print name. And of course, we know that if I go in here and I write a bunch of gibberish, it's just going to print whatever it is that I typed in there, just like that. All right. So if I wrote James like that, it would print James just like I typed it. What if I wanted to capitalize just the first letter? Well, what I could do is I could go over to the documentation and I could just do a quick search for the word capitalize. We can see that it's given me a lot of results here, so I'm going to have to go through here and see if any of this, makes sense with what I'm trying to do. And if I look up toward the top, it says a Python method, built-in types, str, which stands for string, dot capitalize. So I'm going to click on that to find out what that does. We can see here that it returns a copy of the string with its first character capitalized and the rest lowercase. Okay, that sounds like what I need. So I'm going to copy this right here, str.capitalize. I copy the whole thing. I'm going to paste it over here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change str to name because I'm trying to do this to name. So now I have that in my program, but of course it's not really going to do anything that we can see because we're not printing that result out. So I'm going to add a print statement in front of it, print, and then I'll put name.capitalize inside of that. Now I'm going to hit run, and I'm going to type my name in all lowercase. It should print it out once, just like I typed it, and then it should print it out a second time the way I want it with a capital J and then the rest of it lowercase. So I'm going to press enter, and you can see that's exactly what happened there. So this is just a built-in method inside of Python that allows me to do this to the code. I don't even need to understand how it works. I just need to know it does work. And this is one of the great things about learning to program today versus learning to program, 40 years ago, because of course, pre-internet, we couldn't just Google, something like this. We'd have to actually go out and research it, find, resource books, etc., find the answer we were looking for. In fact, I remember writing my first program back in 1994 when I was actually in junior high school, and we didn't have internet at my school. We were using Apple computers, and I remember having to write the program out on notebook paper and turn it in and make sure the teacher approved it before I could actually start writing the program on the computer itself. So times have changed a lot. It's much easier today to learn how to code, and it's really important to understand that because it can be overwhelming if you get it in your head that you have to write every piece of code from scratch. No, you don't. There's going to be a lot of built-in methods inside of both the language itself, and also third-party libraries, which we'll talk about later in the video series. There's other chunks of code that other people have written that you're legally allowed to use in your programs. So some pretty cool stuff. All right, so that's the first thing we're going to talk about is the dot capitalize. Just a couple of quick examples of other things we could do. Let's just leave this up there. Let's say that I wanted to print out a version where it was all capital letters. I could do something like name.upper. And if I run this and type all lowercase, we can see that it changed that to all uppercase. Now, one thing to note, we're not actually reassigning any value to the variable. The variable still remains exactly what I typed, JAMES lowercase, because all this is doing is printing out the uppercase version. But if I went and said print name after that, then it would not print the uppercase version. It would print the actual variable itself, which is still whatever I typed in. So printed James right here, which is what I typed in. It printed the uppercase version of it right here, and then it printed the variable again, the value of the variable, which has not been changed. On the flip side, if I said name equals name.upper, now I'm changing the value of that variable, and if I run it again, you'll see that the variable at first was JAMES, just like I typed it, because it was printing the value of the variable. I then changed the value of the variable, and I printed the new value, which of course was all uppercase. I could also do dot lower, and of course, you can guess what that's going to do, I'm sure. Let's say that I typed in my name like this. It made it all lowercase. Or let's say that I typed it in like this for some odd reason. It made it all lowercase. All right, so just a couple of things we can do there. Another thing we can do is we can actually do what's called a strip method. And what that does is strip out the white space at the beginning and end of a string. So if I run this again and I say my name is space, 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 JAMES, space, 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 it's actually just going to print James because that's the actual value of my variable. Now we can test this and make sure this is true. And I'll show you how we can do that real quick. I'm going to print links of name up here. And then down here, I will print links of name again, and you're going to see that they're not the same. So I'm going to run this. I'm going to type a bunch of spaces. I'm going to type JAMES. I'm going to type 5 characters and then a bunch of spaces. And if I hit enter, we can see that the length of the original variable was 30 because there was 5 letters plus 25 white spaces. But then we actually stripped out all that white space and assigned that new value to name. And when we printed the length of name at that point, it was only 5 because name was just James. There was no white spaces in it. So just some quick examples of some really basic methods that you can use. I think I'll do one more video on strings, and then we're going to move on to the next data type, which is called an integer. If you like this video, be sure and give it a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. And of course, make sure to leave me a comment. This is James with LearnToCode.cc, and thanks again for watching.